This is Kensington Olympia railway station, and in the 1960s you'd have been able to drive your motor vehicle into the railway station, onto an awaiting train, and after some hours of travel arrive at your destination feeling refreshed and relaxed and ready for a day out exploring with your motor vehicle. You might even have partaken in some sort of vehicle race. It was known as motorrail, and whilst it no longer exists, today we'll be taking an imaginary journey from London to Devon for an interesting event. My name is John, welcome to Auto Shenanigans. Why not consider subscribing?
Go on, enjoy your holiday. Go motorrail.
Motorrail was, I think, a stroke of genius. It was a British rail service offered to motorists that operated between 1955 and 1995. Trains were scheduled, comprising of vehicle transport wagons and passenger coaches, and the idea was quite simple. Drive your car into the station where it's loaded onto the train, then secured in position, and you get to sit in a nice first-class carriage with lunch whilst heading to one of several destinations around the country where, on arrival, your car is unloaded and off you go. Whilst a good idea, it wasn't a new idea. Rails and trains have been used to move vehicles since the 1800s, although back then it was probably carts and stagecoaches or whatever. The first instance of proper cars being driven onto and moved by rail was set up in 1909 by the Great Western Railway to transport vehicles from Pilning Station to Severn Tunnel Junction. Back then, there were no road bridges crossing the huge River Severn, and the only way to cross it in a car was to use a ferry or to drive around, which takes ages. Travelling by train was far simpler because in 1886, the Severn Tunnel had been built, meaning you could get across the river in a matter of minutes, so we can see why they set up a car transport service. Over the course of the next few decades, and in line with the rise of the motor car, more services and routes were offered, with British Rail getting involved in 1955, initially offering a handful of drive-on routes, but come 1966, they expanded and rebranded the operation as Motorrail, with the majority of journeys running from London. Specifically Kensington Olympia, where we find a rather run-down-looking structure known as Motorrail Car Park. Today, it's just a car park, but the name is a nod to the building's previous use, which was as a central hub for the entire motorrail system. Having driven in and had your car loaded onto a train, you could reach exotic destinations like Newcastle and Sheffield, but also the nice places in the south of England like Dover and Bristol. When it was in use as the Motorrail terminal, where today there's a car park, would have been a couple of railway sidings and platforms used for the loading of vehicles where the trains would reverse up to a ramp, facilitating the driving on of cars. And interestingly, if you take a walk along the platform at Kensington, you can find the remains of one of these loading ramps and an area where the railway would have been. And it's from Kensington that our imaginary journey begins, a journey that in 1968 saw the London Motor Club travel to Devon to compete against the Torbay Motor Club in a hill climb race event known as the Motorrail Trophy, which suggests to me it was a promotional event put on by British Rail, but either way, a bunch of enthusiasts got together for a jolly gay time, and to get there the London Motor Club used Motorrail. Now you might be thinking, just f***ing drive, dickheads, but here's the thing. Back in those days, there wasn't much of a motorway network or system of trunk roads, and for longer distances, the train was usually faster. Although, even if there were motorways, few cars had the reliability to sit at high speeds for extended periods of time, so when you think about it, something like Motorrail makes perfect sense. You can quickly get from London to Devon without putting the miles on your car or risking a breakdown, and when ticket prices were something like 200 to 300 quid in today's money, it's not a bad idea. From London, it's a 200-ish mile journey to Newton Abbot, and in the case of the Motorrail Trophy train, it's a non-stop direct service which will pass through Exeter's St David's Station, another station used for motorrail things as part of the London to Penzance motorrail service. If we take a look at an old aerial photo, we can see the old motorrail platform and janky loading ramps now lost to redevelopment. Not the case in Newton Abbot though, where a motorrail siding and platform still remains, along with its access point and loading ramp, where cars would have been carefully taken off the train to go about their day. And indeed, that's what we'll be doing, because whilst our motorrail journey may have come to an end, the Motorrail Trophy race event is being held 7 miles from here in Babbacombe Torquay, so we'll be using the car from here. And this is the point you realise that this motorrail malarkey is a bloody brilliant idea. You've just arrived in picturesque Devon, having driven single-figure miles. You're relaxed, refreshed, and ready to take on whatever the world throws at you. So why is it that motorrail these days isn't a thing? Money in it. What started as a fairly profitable endeavour declined over the years because cars got better, as did the road network, resulting in reduced journey times and costs when travelling by car. The train couldn't compete, and services were eventually wound down, with all motor rail operations coming to an end in 1995. Although it's worth a mention that between 1999 and 2005, First Great Western revived the service, but given it only lasted a matter of years, I assume they quickly discovered it wasn't a moneymaker, and since then we've not had any sort of motor rail. Which is a shame, because we're missing out on the Motor Rail Trophy held at Oddicombe Beach, our final destination according to the London Motor Club. The hill climb circuit at Oddicombe was first used in the early 1960s, with the Motor Rail Trophy being held in 1968. The event saw the London Motor Club take on the local Torbay Motor Club in a series of hill climb events on their steep 849-yard course, and the starting line was right here. It's said that the course known as Oddicombe Hill was one of the steepest, with an incline of 11%, and because it was so narrow, tight and twisty with no margin for error, cars were initially limited to 1600 cc's. Even so, the fastest laps were set at average speeds of 75 miles an hour, which is quite a lot considering the limited space available, and flat out you'd expect to cover the length of the track in around 35 to 40 seconds. Starting at the bottom, you make your way under a bridge, then around a left turn, before quickly arriving at the first of 4 hairpin bends, where, if you get it wrong, you'll A, crash into a tree, B, fall down a cliff, or C, crash into a tree and fall down a cliff. But this is hill climbing, where such dangers were shrugged off with a tally-ho chaps, and over several gruelling rounds of hill climbing and a few rounds of auto test in a nearby car park for good measure, there emerged one victorious car club. Having travelled over 200 miles via motor rail to compete in the Motor Rail Trophy, the London Motor Club had their asses handed to them by a bunch of Devonshire carrot crunchers, who were the overall winners of the 1968 Motor Rail Trophy. Put that in your overpriced property and smoke it, they said. Probably. But what happened to the racing here at Oddicombe? For a while, it carried on. Events were held twice a year, right up until the early 2000s, and even then it only stopped because of technicalities. Until that point, the land on which the road sits was private, meaning having a race was easy, but due to some legislative changes, the road became a public road where it's illegal to hold race events, so they had to stop due to a bit of paperwork, which is a shame. As for the Torbay Motor Club, our winners, they're still going now, with over 200 members and putting on rally, hill climb and autocross events, which, if you're in the area and even remotely interested in motorsport, I suggest you go. Without these small clubs and events, there is no motorsport. The London Motor Club, on the other hand, seem to no longer exist, humiliated by their defeat, no doubt. But what about motor rail? I like the idea. It's almost as if your car becomes a travel companion rather than the tool used to get to your destination, and I'm all for it. In fact, I propose 2 motor rail services. London, but the outside of London, no one's driving into London these days, to Penzance, and the same, but to Inverness. Think about it. Penzance, that's the summer holiday sorted, but with the car, no bullshit Cornwall public transport, and the piece of resistance, Inverness. That's the dream right there, and I'll tell you why. Have you ever heard of a thing called the North Coast 500? It's one of the greatest driving trips you'll ever do, but if, like me, you live in first world England, it's a 10-hour drive just to get to the start, by which time I'm tired and ready to come home again, driving another 500 miles and then 10 hours more to get home. Motor rail. Load up the race car, have a brunch and a sleep, then arrive in Inverness ready to start the North Coast 500 feeling wide awake, and afterwards a nice relaxing train ride home. It could scarcely be better. But it will never happen, because have you seen the price of train tickets? Now factor in a car and extra passengers, it'll be £1,000 before you start. Not that it matters, because the train would be cancelled, leaves on the line. But in principle, it would be easy enough. All we'd need to do is build one massive railway, and we're pretty good at that. Sorry, no, we're shit at railways. It could be good, but let's not bother, and instead we can enjoy a painful drive down the M5 or up the M6, and if you don't have or need a car, you can jump on our cost-effective, reliable train services that we're well known for around the world. Japan, Switzerland, the Netherlands, France, Germany, Spain, they got nothing on us, but anyway, I hope you enjoyed this look at, I don't know what it was it trains or racetracks? But thank you very much for watching, like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care, bye-bye. It's a mob of Network Rail.
Going for Dan, take care.
Cheers, Dan. Cheers, Darren. Have a good one. And the starting line was right here. Dog. Great, good take. Yep, all right, nice.